So this one, and we know what Flores alleged. At some point during the 2019 season, Stephen Ross offered $100,000 per loss, and Flores documented it, sounded the alarm, sent the memo internally. And at one point, NFL Network reported that there was an unnamed witness who corroborated that Ross said $100,000.
Yeah,
and
right.
I was told a long time ago, Ross's defense is going to be, it was a joke.
Yeah.
And I think but for the Brian Flores lawsuit, the NFL would have said, it's not a funny joke.
Yeah.
I think the Brian Flores lawsuit is one of the key reasons why the NFL circled the wagons, because they're in wagon circling mode with the Brian Flores lawsuit. And one of the claims is you fired me because I raised the alarm internally about tanking, and I resisted these efforts to tank. And you fired me in violation of Florida public policy because I blew the whistle on tanking. So they can't. Because of that lawsuit, they cannot find that Stephen Ross was trying to get Brian Flores to tank. They can't do it.
No.
There's a separate reason why they can't do it that deals with legalized gambling. But for that reason alone, they can't do it. And I say all that because when you look at the findings, it looks like they found
he's guilty.
At a minimum, attempted tanking.
Yes.
Attempted tanking.
Right.
Here we go. The Dolphins, this is paragraph 1 of the findings that were made as to tanking. The Dolphins did not intentionally lose games during the 2019 season, nor did anyone at the club, including Mr. Ross, instruct Coach Flores to do so. No witness contended otherwise. The Dolphins competed hard to win every game, including at the end of the season when they beat Cincinnati and New England, while worsening Miami's position in the 2020 draft. Let's go to point 2, though, because they tie together. On a number of occasions... Funny, this wasn't point 1.
I know, it's
on
hilarious.
A number of occasions during the 2019 season, Mr. Ross expressed his belief that the Dolphins' position in the upcoming 2020 draft should take priority over the team's win-loss record.
Expressed his belief.
Expressed his belief. These comments, now this is the owner of the team, by the way, the guy who signs the checks.
Yeah.
These comments were made most frequently to team president and CEO Tom Garfinkel, but also were made to general manager Chris Greer, senior vice president Brandon Shore, and Coach Flores. These comments, which he took to be suggestions that he lose games, troubled Coach Flores and led him to express his concerns in writing to senior club executives, each of whom assured Coach Flores that everyone, including Mr. Ross, supported him in building a winning culture in Miami. After this, Mr. Ross no longer made any such comments to Coach Flores. Doesn't say whether or not he made the comments to anyone else, but he no longer made them to Coach Flores. Look, this is unbelievable to me because I've said this for years. This goes back to Johnny Manziel being drafted by the Browns.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Browns, insisting at the time, I never told anyone to draft Johnny Manziel.
Right.
This is one of the privileges of being the owner of an NFL team and a multi-billionaire. And I make this example in playmakers. If the boss, the multi-billionaire, walks through the front door and there's a bowl of candy and they're Kit Kats, and he's never seen one before in his life, and he's never had one in his life, and he unwraps it and he takes a bite and he says to the receptionist, this is the best candy I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Anywhere that guy goes and opens a drawer, Kit Kats are going to fall out of it. Anybody who wants to continue to work for him knows he likes Kit Kats. He doesn't have to say, go out and buy 1,000 bags of Kit Kats. You do it because they all pay attention to the person who runs the team. They're all listening for whatever it takes. They're all on pins and needles. They're all tiptoeing on eggshells around the guy who is the center of power in the organization. One of the benefits of being that guy is you never have to order the code red. You never have to say, go lose games. You make your preferences known.
Yeah.
And the people who are smart enough and who truly want to continue to work for you will listen and act accordingly.
No doubt.
You never have to say to Brian Flores, I want you to lose games. All you have to say is, you know, I was thinking it would be better
insinuation.
For us. Not even insinuation.
Yeah.
Expressed his belief.
I know. But even if somebody did insinuate
position
it, you would
should
take
take
it.
priority. All he has to say is, hey, you know, Coach, our draft position next year, in my mind, takes priority to our win-loss record this year. You don't even have to wink when you say it, when you're Stephen Ross. And this is where it's mind-blowing that they didn't take action against Ross, because you're never going to catch a guy tanking if the person who blows the whistle is also the one that saved the owner's ass by refusing to do it. The only reason it didn't happen is because Flores refused to do it.
Right.
And the only reason we know about it, Chris, is because Flores complained about it.
Yeah.
How many times has it happened? Hey, Lovie Smith did it in Tampa. Sorry, Lovie. He did it in Tampa. He went with it when they took out half the starting lineup in the second half of the Week 17 game against the Saints to blow a double-digit lead so they could nail down Jameis Winston. Sean Payton was on this program at the Super Bowl, and he said, I'm standing on the sideline, and usually I get a report when starters out.
Game,
right. And everybody's out.
Right.
They're all out. What's going on? We're starting the third quarter, and everybody's out. What the hell's going on? Peyton's a firm believer that the Buccaneers tanked in that game. He believes the Eagles tanked. Remember that Week 17 game on NBC?
It affected the Giants' playoff.
Jalen Hurts is out, and they put Nate Sudfeld in.
Right.
Peyton's a believer that they tanked then. And we don't know about it because the coach didn't blow the whistle because the coach went along with it.
Yeah.
The coach is not going to blow the whistle on something he went along with because he's hurt by it too. It's astounding to me that they didn't punish Ross because Ross tried to tank. But for Brian Flores, and Roger Goodell commended Brian Flores for resisting. But for Flores, they would have tanked, but we also would have never known about it.
No, they don't. When the NFL doesn't want to incriminate themselves here. I mean, I think that's bottom line. That's where it came to. Exactly right. I mean, the first paragraph and the second paragraph don't even make sense when you read them back to back. It's like they're literally talking out of both sides of their mouth there, really. They are. And I think to your point, you've said this for a little while, I think it is very real, especially in football world. It doesn't have to be in writing. It doesn't have to be a part of a contract. Head coaches, owners, whatever, it's got that military, take the command. Yep. Oh, okay, I know. They don't have to, command you and you go. John Gruden insinuated something to me when I was the quarterback of the Bucs. If he insinuated, I went, okay, he wants me to do that. All right. He'd like to see me out on the field. He told me a story once about quarterbacks used to throw balls at garbage cans and they'd stack them up and do that. And you know what I was doing 2 days later? I was going, let me go do that. He obviously likes when quarterbacks do that. So let me get the quarterback coach out and do that. Yeah, that to your point is where we're going here. It doesn't have to be something, in writing or anything like that. And that's where it's tough. Obviously, Flores fought back against it, but to me, it doesn't get much more blatant than that in a lot of ways, but nothing's going to happen here. They went really hard on the first one, probably could have gone harder. They're not going to go any hard on the tanking charges because that just is a total shit show for the NFL as a whole. Sorry, Matt Casey. Not London there. Sorry, Matt Casey, who's in the room today watching us.
We're actually in a position where when we drop the periodic S-bomb, we can see his facial expressions.
But even in here, let me just, it goes on in any workplace, to your point. I have bosses here at NBC. Sometimes I say things about quarterbacks. They come in and they want to correct me or say something. Tell me I shouldn't have said this about the quarterback. And I legitimately for a second start to go, man, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'll correct that. But then I realize they know nothing about quarterbacks and I don't change my opinion. But that's what happens, so you do think that.
But there's a deference. That's your point. There's a deference built into the hierarchy. There is. And when you're dealing with the person at the very top of the hierarchy who is a multi-billionaire, one of the most powerful people in the world, and he's saying, I can't believe they put this in writing, that he expressed his belief
it doesn't even make sense.
That draft position should take priority. That's all you need to find that he tanked. He put the wheels in motion, and I'm telling you, and I don't want to engage in hyperbole here, Brian Flores is a hero. He's a hero for pushing back against Stephen Ross and ignoring Stephen Ross. And because he did, that's what led to, and this is the third point from the tanking findings in the NFL statement, one such comment that Ross made is a claimed offer by Mr. Ross to pay Coach Flores $100,000 to lose games, as to which there are differing recollections about the wording, the timing, and the context. Wasn't that true of anything that anyone says? There's differing recollections. We're human beings. There's always differing recollections of what was said, the wording, the timing, and the context. However phrased, such a comment was not intended or taken to be a serious offer, nor was the subject pursued in any respect by Mr. Ross or anyone else at the club. Well, wait a minute. I thought Brian Flores took it to be a serious offer. So that's baloney right there.
Yeah.
He took it to be a serious offer. See, if you're going to put credence in the things Brian Flores is saying, you can't pick or choose what you're going to believe and what you're not going to believe.
Exactly.
Well, we believe Brian Flores when he reduced to writing his concerns about Stephen Ross expressing his belief that draft position takes precedence over win-loss record, but we're not going to believe him when he says that he took that offer
It's totally serious, right.
And here's how it goes. Ross keeps saying to Brian Flores, draft position takes precedence over win-loss record, and he's still winning games, and he's still saying it, and at some point, Ross says, what do I have to do? Offer you $100,000 per loss? I mean, that may have been how it went, or maybe stronger than that. But you're right. They were not going to find that he did it because of the Flores lawsuit. And Chris, I'm surprised there already hasn't been a class action lawsuit brought on behalf of everyone who placed a legal wager on the Dolphins on a money line or on a spread bet in 2019, arguing that the Dolphins weren't trying to win. This is what the NFL cannot have in a world of legalized gambling. You cannot have anyone connected to a team that isn't constantly saying, all we want to do is win. All we want to do is win. Nothing else matters. And that's why the NFL, I think they don't have a draft lottery, because they don't want to legitimize the temptation in December and January when your team is done, when your team is out of it, to not try to win every game. They don't want to go there because that's how you get lawsuits. That's how you get prosecutions. That's how you end up with an agency, a federal agency like the Securities and Exchange Commission that has full regulatory power over professional football. They don't want it. That's why Stephen Ross wasn't punished for what he did. And at a minimum, it's attempted tanking. At a minimum, he aimed the gun, he missed the guy, he was trying to shoot him, he pulled the trigger and he missed. And he's not accountable for that.
No, I mean, I know you brought up a few, reasons or examples, of the teams tanking, Lovie Smith, the Bucks, all that, the Eagles, all that. But I do think, as a whole, the NFL, there's more coaches, I feel like, made of the mold of Brian Flores. As we've talked about before, you've heard me say this. This goes back to an old Bill Parcells quote I've heard my dad say before, where they put the record on your gravestone. They do. And these guys, as we've talked about this before, most of these coaches, especially if they're not sure if they're totally secure, don't want to tank. One, because it's going to be held against them, like you talked about. And two, they do want to build a winning culture. That's what Flores was trying to do here, and it's probably what will stop any class lawsuit or whatever, the fact that they won those last two games against the Bengals and a Patriots team that was going to the playoffs. But that'll always be the issue there. That's where owners need to be, I think, really careful going forward. Because this is a thing now. But most coaches, they're not going to be in the business of, folding their tents and going, we're going to lose this one today. I just don't believe they believe in that karma. It's always about fighting, winning, building something. And they know that, even though if they did tank or lost games deliberately and lost the last 5 games of the year, as I know, anybody knows, 2 years later, everybody's going to go, well, he lost those last 5 games of the year that year, and no one's going to stick up for him. The owner's not going to come out and go, well, I told him to lose him. It wasn't really his fault. So that's where coaches, I think, are going to have to continue to push back here a little bit and maybe do have some power with
Sean
this.
Payton has made the point as well that tanking is just completely contrary to what you try to do in building a program.
It's a disease of your team.
Once you do that, you're never getting back the guys who are out there trying to play their best.
It's scary
to do that. You take out the
that.
starter, you put in the backup. We're trying to lose the game.
Right.
You undermine your culture and you poison it to the point where you cannot resuscitate the body.
Exactly right. That's what a lot of coaches would tell you. Exactly right.
One last thing too, and I've said this before on the show. I think it was 2019 at the league meetings in March in Arizona.
Yeah.
I was talking to Jeffrey Lurie at that cocktail party that they do on Monday night.
Yeah.
And Stephen Ross saunters up, and the topic comes up generally about improving your draft standing through not.
So are you part of this conversation?
Well, now that it's over, I can't be subpoenaed. But I remember vividly Stephen Ross saying, sometimes you just got to take your lumps. And I've said it before on this show or elsewhere. Sometimes you just got to take your lumps. And that was when Tua was the target. That's the irony in all this.
That was all they talked
about. Tua breaks
about.
his hip.
Right.
Joe Burrow becomes Stephen Ross's fascination. Remember, they tried to get the Bengals to trade out of the top spot, and the Bengals just wouldn't even engage in the conversation. Right. And then they take Tua instead of Justin Herbert. So I guess you could say that Stephen Ross ultimately got what he deserved because he didn't get Justin Herbert. But he should have been punished for attempted tanking. And the reason he wasn't is it strengthens Brian Flores' lawsuit if he is. And on top of that, it exposes a box full of Pandora as it relates to this world of legalized gambling.
Yeah, it definitely does. But, I don't know. It's funny, too, where I just look at, like, Stephen Ross and his comment and then everything he said yesterday, which didn't make sense either.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.